Man, I keep asking myself if I'm ready to do this or not. But anyway, welcome back to the Cartoon Syndicate. I am Paul Densmore. And this book should look familiar if you've been watching these videos sequentially because we're back. We're back on X-Men Extinction Agenda. This time, last time we looked at Jim Lee, and this time we're looking at Rob Liefeld. And man, uh, yeah, I went through this book. I had planned, man. I had really planned to not ding him on anything after the Deathstroke book and after everything. I was just like, man, let's have a 100% positive Rob Liefeld video. But then I started. There's two Liefeld issues in this book, and I started going through them, and I was like, what in the heck, man? What in the world? Like I just couldn't, in good conscience, let this stuff slide without mentioning it. But okay, you see all of these pins and um, bookmarks in the book. Every time I ding him, I'm going to find something else that's comparable, that's as comparable as I can get to praise him on. And then there are two pages within this book that I think are spectacular. And so those are, it was like, okay, can I just stick to these two pages? And I reviewed my soul and my own morals, and I was like, no, I can't just look at those two pages. We got to look at everything. All right. So we're still 90s extreme. All right, that's a hell of a lead up, but we're looking at the guys that would go on to spearhead Image, to form Image Comics. I mean, as far as I can remember, and I may have this wrong, but I mean, I believe, as far as I can remember, Liefeld led the pack, man, because Youngblood, I remember Youngblood coming out before anything else. And just, Youngblood was one of those that I was like, man, that looks amazing, but I didn't buy off the rack. And yet, like everything else after, I went back and I rebought it. I think I bought issue 2, and I was like, okay, it's not bad. Let's go back and get issue 1. And so then, of course, by that time, because those were, hot books back then, I think I had to pay like $10, but that was back in the 90s. So, a teenage kid, $10 was, a fair amount of change back then. And so, yeah, I remember Liefeld leading the pack, and please correct me if I'm wrong. Please correct me if I'm wrong on any of this. One thing I do want to say before I go on, I have to go back my Tezuka video. I started calling panel transitions moment to moment. We really didn't see any moment to moment. We did see subject to subject and scene to scene. But the main thing that I was calling moment to moment, that's an aspect to aspect change. So it's basically, and we'll look at examples of that. You know what? It's right here. Let me just pull it out real quick, because this will be an interesting contrast. Let me see. Let me actually go to where I'm at. Yeah, I thought it was further than this. But you'll see it a lot. These are pretty much moment to moment right here. So it's 1 second at a time almost. Okay, so that's an example of moment to moment. So for instance, if the example I always think of is if we're looking at Isaac Newton under a apple tree. Okay, there's a moment where he's sitting there under the apple tree, peaceful and calm. There's a moment where we see an apple start to break off from the limb. There's a moment where we're watching the apple fall. There's a moment where bonk hits him on the head. There's a moment where it rolls off, moment to moment to moment. So basically almost second to second to second. Man, I thought there would be way more examples of aspect to aspect in this because he does it a lot. Oh, I have one to point out. Look at that tree. Like that blew me away the other day when I got to that page. That is the best looking tree I've ever seen in comics. That reminds me of some like super old, centuries old trees that I saw in China that they have in some courtyards there when I lived in China. That's some pretty amazing stuff right there. All right, so let's just go back to the beginning because I know that there's at least one that we can take a look at. Yeah, this one. And I pointed this out. So these two. So like when we cut to the thunder, and then we cut back to just feet walking. But these two panels, especially like this sign right here and the onomatopoeia, these are aspect to aspect. So it's like we're watching the same scene, but we're looking at different aspects of the same scene to give us atmospheric changes. So that is something that is very inherent within manga. Tezuka uses it a lot, and we can learn more and more, especially because it's a good pacing element. It kind of sets us, it's adds to the emotional depth and connection that the reader feels towards the story. So, something to think about. Okay, so again, I make mistakes. We all make mistakes. I try to correct my mistakes. Sorry, I thought we weren't rolling for a second there, but yeah. So we are not looking at Tezuka though. We are looking at Rob Liefeld, and let's just go ahead and break into it. The one little story that I do want to mention before we get into this is, and I think this is something that like made me appreciate Liefeld even more. It was an old like newspaper article that read about him, and this came out back in the 90's, like when he was just hitting that mark of popularity. This would have been about the time of the infamous jeans commercial. What was it, a Levi's commercial that he was in? And hi, I'm Rob Liefeld. I created Deadpool, and all these things. And which, to most people was like, why the hell is he on there? And then to comic book geeks, we were like, yes, unless they were very geeky, in which they're like, oh, he sold out. He's in a jeans commercial. Like, dude, come on. But within the article, it starts off, like, I guess that the reporter is downstairs with his wife, and apparently at the time he was going up in sort of like an attic or something to draw, and he would come down the stairs, and apparently he was beaming. And like, this is, when I incorporated this into my art and we go back into the Kirby mindset, this is that mindset, okay? And so Liefeld was just beaming, after his drawing session, basically upstairs working. And he comes down, his wife asks him, what are you so happy about? What are you smiling about, beaming about? And he goes, I just drew something cool with my new comic. And it was like that simple, I mean, comics can literally save our lives. Our art can save our lives. And I speak from experience, man, because like, can really lift our spirits. And if you really have a passion for what you're doing in life, You know, sometimes you have to take a step back and ask yourself, like, what do I really want to do in life? What do I really enjoy? What do I really love? Okay? And that could be getting into comics or any art form or any, you know, even business ideas, whatever. I'm making this very generic. And then you help hone in on the concept. Okay, so I like comics. What kind of comics do I like? What really ignites my soul? And then when you start making your stuff, you know, ask yourself, is this, like, am I beaming after I'm done with this? Am I like, man, I just did something cool? And now, you know, there should be a level of humility because, you know, we all have drawn cool stuff and then like crumpled and go, oh, that's crap, you know, and crumpled it up and thrown it in the garbage can. And then we come back, you know, maybe a week later and uncrumple it. I'm like, hey, that wasn't that bad, you know. Might not be perfect, but it wasn't complete garbage. It was at least a good first sketch, you know. So again, we shouldn't be so hard on ourselves. We should be holding ourselves accountable. All right. So there's like 1, 2, you know, don't be so hard on yourself. 1, 2, do hold yourself accountable. 3, is your soul, mind, everything being ignited by what you're putting down on the page? Because that's what that's what gets transmitted to the reader, you know. And it, again, just like with Kirby, I said with Kirby, if you're not feeling it, you know, then how is the reader going to feel anything? And sorry, my sort of post-COVID cough is starting to come back, so I'm going to try not to hack. Okay, oh man, okay, are we getting into this? Okay, so right off the bat, I've got to ding him, and you're going to be like, what's wrong with this page? Nothing is wrong with this page, okay? I can't take that out. I'm going to move it over to the side so I can lay that flat so we can get a good look at it. This page, I think, is awesome. So I want to commend him on this page. I mean, foreshortening, okay? I told you, we'd find an example of where Liefeld did foreshortening right. Boom. He never does it in that extreme. Even though it's bigger, that one's still pretty big as well. You know? This foot, bigger than that foot. Okay? That's... this is a more realistic foreshortening, but still in your face, in the camera, coming out, 3D, good action. All right? Backgrounds, good backgrounds. Not much in the way of perspective, but hey, that's okay. Doesn't always have to happen. There's no perspective whatsoever on those garbage cans. Still works, still readable. The flow of action works quite fairly well. You know, perspective lines mostly going that way. But yeah, going that way as well. So yeah, we have things flowing in this general direction. And another good one right here. And then what I'm going to ding him on is just a choice. It's a choice. This one's not the one that really gets me because it's not necessarily good or bad. It's just a questionable choice. Okay. We see this good frontal action of Jubilee running towards the camera. Now, a very questionable choice when we reverse this. Yep. And we get the crotch shot right here. So, you know, nothing wrong with the drawing. Foreshortened, anatomy's fairly good, you know, action, but you know, we get Jubilee's crotch in our face, which, you know, again, are we trying to appeal to teens? You know, there you go. There's the question. Okay, here's the next one. This is a good example. Okay, say what you want about this. I like this. I think it could have been, you could have pushed the foreshortening a little bit more, but I'm not going to complain. And the main thing I want to show is that this adds up. Okay? This is in time. She is kicked. The kick has already gone through. She's fully extended. This guy is reacting to the kick. Okay? Good stuff. I love it. Great action. You know? Now we're going to look at a not so good example. This guy right here does not compute. And you might go, well, what's the problem? These guys are living in different time zones. He has not made any physical contact with this guy. This arm is over here away from this guy. This arm is going through there but not touching anything. His body still has not made any contact with this guy whatsoever, and yet this guy is selling it like his life depends on it. He is already crumpled up and, This is the pro wrestling scene. He hasn't even touched this guy, and this guy's overselling it. Okay? So I'm guessing maybe he was watching pro wrestling when he was, getting that. But this is a bad example. These guys are living in two completely different time zones. This is before the hit. This is after the hit. And apparently there's the hit right there. So we've got three different time zones happening within one single panel. Okay. And this is just one of the single issues. Okay. But well drawn. Well drawn. All right. Let's go ahead. Should I go ahead and finish with the dinging? I'm going to go ahead and finish with the dinging. Then we'll look at the two good pages. And let's get this out of the way. Do you see anything wrong with this panel? I would just like to point, and he does this every now and again, and it's almost like Rob, because there's plenty of examples of him doing it right, and it's like, Rob, you know what to do. Do it right. It's just like, nah, I don't want to. Look at that waist, man. That guy's crotch, and I hate to point this out, but that guy's crotch is wider than that waist. Everything else, properly proportioned, super skinny, inconceivable waist for no reason. And he's not like that. I mean, we just watched him tackle a guy, pro wrestle tackle a guy. And he's not like that in any other panel. It's just that one panel, all of a sudden, he's got, he's got issues. So now we're going to come over here, and before we even get to the 2 pages, I want to point out, since I dinged him, I want to point out something good. Look at the reflections and the shading on those visors. That is how it's done, son. Okay? That screams 80s and 90s more than anything else in the world. That is how it should be. Can I get a good close-up on that without it? Can the camera just... Let me see. Maybe. No, unfortunately, it's not going to work with me on that one. Okay, that's pretty good. Okay, bring that back, please. That is the coolest thing ever. And the video doesn't really do it justice. If I could zoom in. Let me see if I can zoom in. Yeah, there we go. Look at that. Look at all that hatching, all that shading. Everything going on in there. That's the coolest ever. There will be none higher, as Reverend would say. There are none higher. Okay. And that's the good. All right. Now we're going to look at the really good. We're going to go through these 2 pages. I love... People may ding him on this, but it's one of the things I love about his art. When he goes into simple line drawings that are almost like, again, reversed silhouettes. Like negative spaces. And he does this a lot. And he uses silhouettes a lot. And I wanted to utilize the other comic but it almost looked like someone else had drawn most of the other comic. Like most of the faces did not look like his style of face. A lot of things just didn't quite add up. There were so many different inking styles going around. And it was one of those where it was like, instead of just saying Rob Liefeld was the artist, it said Rob Liefeld and Company. So it was like, okay, maybe he didn't do that one all by himself. But we've got this dynamic cable. Again, that's a good kind of offset panel. Again, that narrow 90's extreme panel where they put a lot of detail in. Even though this is simplified detail, we can tell who each one of those characters is. And then it kind of reverses. We get Cable popping out at us, which leads us down here into these characters. Gambit. All right. The only thing that I will say is that it's a little bit confusing because you've got this thought bubble leading down into here, and yet this is leading into here. But really, this is supposed to be cutting. I believe we're supposed to go bump, bump, bump. And then, because that leads us into the action, I mean, obviously on the next page, which that might be a little confusing, but again, not that bad. Not that bad. We figured it out. Okay, kind of took us out of the flow of the story a little bit. But hey, we're staying with the positive here. That's an intense look on Gambit's face. Well, I mean, that character is always, kind of silhouetted when he's got his powers going, but still, good silhouettes going, good body dynamics, proportions, everything. We have some backgrounds. Excellent dynamic Gambit panel. Okay, I mean, that's classic Gambit right there with the card coming out, shooting towards us. Good use of foreshortening, dynamic wrinkling. Again, I urge everyone to go out and get like those Bern Hogarth dynamic books, where he's dynamic fabric and drapery, something like that, wrinkles and drapery, I believe it is. All right, where he goes into all the different folds and how gravity affects all clothing and everything. I still haven't 100% grasped it yet, but one of these days, concepts just kind of click into place in my brain when they want to. Again, coming back into that good use of simplified line drawing, where we've got that going that, although we've got two different directions, cards going that way, but yet the guy getting hit is going that way. It does kind of lead us out. I was going to mention something about that, but again, we're highlighting positives. Staying positive here. Staying positive. And again, throwaway panels that haven't been just thrown away. Okay? There's enough. I've seen Liefeld do this overhead shot. He does it a lot. He's good at it. And this is when he's actually doing it right. Again, if we go back to that Deathstroke thing, there's a picture of him laid out on, of Deathstroke laid out on a stretcher. And for some reason, it's directly overhead. But there is no perspective whatsoever. And it literally looks, even though he's supposed to be lying unconscious, it looks like he's sort of running towards the viewer. Because again, there's no perspective within that shot. It's like a extreme overhead shot with like this rectangle that's supposed to be the stretcher. And he's just on top of that lifeless rectangle. And you have to take a moment and figure out, like, why is he running? What is he doing? doing? Why does he look both passed out and running at the same time? Oh, he's supposed to be huddled up on a stretcher. Oh, that's bad. But here, it's excellent. It's fantastic. Um, you know, so it's kind of a moment of when he cares and when he doesn't care. Um, again, we have this foreground. I kind of like that Bob Ross foreground where you just have things in the extreme foreground, even if they can be simplified or silhouetted, or even negative space. Here we get a rat butt. So, you know. All right. Well, I hope I cleared the air a little bit. Um, I mean, I tried. I really tried. I do love the guy, and I love his art. I mean, what he does well, he does so well that it's awe-inspiring. But then every now and again, he does these things. It's just like, why, Rob? Why? Why you do this to me? You know? And there's no answer back. You know. Um, so that's the thing with Liefeld. You take the good with the bad. But I think there's enough good, there are enough pros that it definitely makes up for any con that might be out there. All right. So again, I will remind everyone that if you dig the content that I'm throwing out, please throw me a like and a subscribe. I'm gonna keep making these videos whether anybody watches them or not, because they're fun for me, and I hope they're fun for you to watch. And so, with that, I bid you adieu and on to the next one. Thank you very much.